I wasn't able to kind of make decisions and stand by them. I had a really deep sense of sort of imposter syndrome. My confidence sort of plummeted. I was kind of questioning myself, things that I was doing.
Because the moment I was like, no, I'm not going on payroll, I need to invoice. They were like, oh, and let's add, I had my child at 16. So I was more like, no, I can't do that. They're like, child, why is everything wrong with you? You're holding a baby and holding an invoice.
And I spent the money on the offices, and we were getting it all kitted out, and we had a launch and everything, and literally within 4 weeks the turnover plummeted. And I kept thinking next month it'll be better, and started ploughing in money to keep the business going, to keep the staff on.
I didn't really have that much money. I had my savings, but I don't come from a family of privilege. I come from a working class family. So I had all of these kind of barriers that at the time I didn't realise were barriers. I just got on with it and just moved. I moved without thinking. I had an idea.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of She's the Boss Female Entrepreneur Stories, where I'm joined by phenomenal women who have taken that leap and started their own businesses. As usual, if you haven't already done so, make sure you click that subscribe button so that you're the first to know when I release a new interview. And if you're not already following me on social media, please follow. At Twitter, I'm at She's the Boss INTL. On Instagram, I'm at She's the Boss UK. On Facebook, it's Daniela Genus, She's the Boss. And on LinkedIn, I am Daniela Genus. So today, I am joined by the Director of Interims for Development and the author, Frances Mensah Williams, CBE, no less. Good morning, Frances.
Good morning, Daniela. Lovely to see you.
You too. So you have a CBE. So I'm going to assume that's because you've done fantastic things. Tell us more about those fantastic things. How did you start Interims for Development? Tell us about being an author and how those two things kind of merged.
Yeah, those two things have merged over the years. But I started Interims for Development because I had been working in the UK ever since I started sort of my professional life. And then, as fate would have it, I went over to work in Ghana for 5 years. And my background is HR, Human Resources Management. And after being sort of HR director for a bank there, coming back to the UK, I found it really difficult to just come back into corporate life here in the UK and carry on seamlessly, because I was just so keen and driven to do something for the African continent and continue my connection, both with Ghana, but broadly with the continent, because, you know, I had seen and worked with so many really talented people, but there was if you like, a disconnect between some of the resources available to bring in more people to build on that expertise. So having got back to the UK, I did a couple of interim roles, and then I thought, nah, this isn't working for me. And I couldn't find a job that brought together the things that mattered to me. And so I just decided, I guess, as a lot of people do, create what isn't there. Mm-hmm. And Interims for Development was initially built around a program which was going to be about sending interim managers to work for short assignments within African businesses. So very much a corporate-led skills building, capability building initiative. So the idea was to sign up people, either people of African descent or otherwise, and really work with businesses on the ground within Africa to look at where they might find these short interventions useful. And that was the sort of the origin of the program. But as happens with business, you start with your great idea, and then you start talking to the market, and the market tells you what they want. Mm-hmm. And what I was finding was, interestingly, I mean, my interims were going pretty much as volunteers, and so the program would pay for them to go. Mm-hmm. The host organization would provide them with accommodation, and the program would provide a small stipend. But then I started getting some pushback from some organizations going, well, why are they coming for free? What's wrong with them? Mm-hmm. So then it's like, okay, would you be happier if you paid for them? yeah, then at least. So it went from that sort of voluntary model much more into a consultancy model, simply because it just seemed to be a barrier to people because the whole concept of interim management was itself a barrier. So a tip for people starting a business, try not to name it something that you then have to explain what it is to people before you start selling the actual service. So, at that point, it became clear that the business model had to evolve. And so we were also getting questions around training and could we get some trainers in and all sorts. So it expanded really beyond that initial placement for a short period into consulting, advisory. And then the sort of initial target was sort of small, medium businesses who I thought, you know, they're going to have less money to pay for big consultancies. But we were getting the big organizations coming and saying, we don't really know many people who do what you're doing for Africa, and we've got lots of operations in Africa. Can you help us look at this, that, and the other? So long story short, over the years, it moved from being this very sort of voluntary, simple model for small companies to becoming a much wider, broader proposition for bigger organizations. But the central theme remained the same. How do we build capability? How do we build on skills within the African continent? How do we help businesses grow and develop? And how do we help people start new businesses? So we did a lot around small business training and development in countries like Zimbabwe, South Africa, Nigeria. And in Ghana, we worked with other organizations from UN to non-governmental organizations. We've worked on projects with, for example, the UK African charity of Ford. We ran a project called Opportunity Africa, working with young people of African descent in London who wanted to make a connection and do something and give back to their continent of origin, but didn't quite know how to do that. So pretty wide variety of things.
By the way, you're speaking and I'm getting more and more excited by the second, because I feel like I was supposed to meet you today. Because everything that you just said is what I want to do. So we can have a conversation off air, but
we can have that conversation.
That just sounds like a dream come true. Such an exciting opportunity to really make an impact. And what would you say has been the highlight on that process? Because I assume the reason, well, not even I assume, you said it, the reason why you wanted to do that is to help build capacity in different countries within Africa, and you're clearly living that and doing that. What would you say has been kind of the highlight of the journey and building the business?
Goodness, there have been a lot. And I think at many stages along the way, I've been pinching myself, how come I'm here? I had left a professional career and yeah, fine, I was doing well. I was a human resources director. I'd kind of gone up the chain, but I was pretty much doing, a standard job. You could take me out and put anybody in there. And, slightly different style, but, they get the job done. But in this instance, I was building as I went. And I was building on a passion, but I was also being very pragmatic about how to implement that passion. I was learning a lot from other people, but I would sometimes just sort of find myself thinking, what is going on? I remember there was one time I was sitting in a breakfast meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister of South Africa, with about 3 or 4 cabinet ministers and a couple of sort of senior makers and journalists, and I was there with my journalist hat on because the other thing I did was to start an online magazine called Reconnect Africa, which is all about providing a free platform of information and tools and interviews for young professional, well, not even young, for global Africans. So I'm sitting around this breakfast table one morning thinking, why am I here? But hey, it was really interesting and everyone thought I had something useful to say. So you know what? You just claim it and you move on. And but sometimes you just get to meet extraordinary people, and sometimes it's just ordinary people who just give you such extraordinary insights. So it's not even necessarily about those people being famous or whatever. It's really just about the experience and being and talking to different people, being in different places. Again, I did a couple of media tours. I did one in South Africa, and just sitting in Parliament building, taking notes as they go through a debate and writing up a piece about it afterwards, and all of this sort of stuff, finding myself on a stage giving a TED talk, right? Talking about how I sort of took that journey of returning skills to Africa through the ways that I could do it. So many sort of highlights, standing in Buckingham Palace, getting a CBE, standing in Buckingham Palace, saying hi to the Queen at the reception, organized by the South Africans. I mean, it's just been crazy moments, loads, but absolutely fascinating.
No, it sounds it. And so they're moving away from the business then to you being an author. 7 published books, is that correct?
Correct.
Tell us about that. And how do you manage the two? Because two things that would require a lot of effort. Yeah, how are you managing two things at the same time that are really quite monumental things?
You know, I've kind of come to the conclusion that as women, we can do everything, but I'm not sure we can do everything at the same time. And to some extent, I've managed to do it, but you know what? It's hard, and it's hard work. And I guess for me, it's probably a good thing I'm not a great shopper, and I'm not a great sort of, you know, telly watcher and all the rest of it. I just love reading when I'm not having to do something. But writing was something that I've wanted to do and have always done. And I just used to do it privately to myself. I used to just, you know, scribble short stories, and just never really had that confidence or even the time to really sort of say, right, I'm going to move into writing and try it full time, which I think today a lot of people do. But I was doing it alongside work, alongside raising a family. And so it was when we were living in Ghana that I finally put myself into the space of saying, look, you started a story, you've got this idea for a story, so just write it. And I'd been signed off sick because I was pregnant and my second one was playing all kinds of tricks. So I was home and I thought, okay, this is the time to do it. And so I wrote the draft of what became my first novel, From Pasta to Pigfoot. And I wrote that, and literally it sat in a drawer for a long time. Kept bringing it out, dusting it off, touching it up a bit, and then putting it straight back in the drawer. And it wasn't until we came back from Ghana to the UK and I started trying to find out what the literary scene here was like, and realizing it was quite a difficult way to break in, because I was writing very commercial novels with Black women as the stars. And at that time, it was very much sort of, the Black novels were very street, you know, very sort of gangstery type overlay. And that wasn't kind of my Hampstead heroine, you know, who was running around fighting with her boyfriend and trying herself. So it took a while to find a home for that book, but I was fortunate and I did. And it came out in 2015 and it was published by Jacaranda, who offered me a 2-book deal. So the following year, I produced the sequel, which is called From Pasta to Pigfoot, Second Helpings. And that then sort of went on. And I guess since then, I've sort of just started to become much, much, much more focused on writing. So my latest novel came out earlier this year in March, and we'll talk books, I think, probably a bit later as well. But it's called Imperfect Arrangements, and I'm whooping up and down because it got a review from Publishers Weekly last week, which is like the US book Bible, which was like, yeah, it said, called it a charming story, and it said, well, readers are sure to enjoy this uplifting work. So that was like, great. And Waitrose Weekend featured it as well as a recommended buy. So yeah, so I'm busy, but it's all good. It's all good.
Oh, I love talking to you already. So in terms of kind of everything that you've done, you've needed to, I suppose, embody and possess a certain level of confidence. Can you tell us more about kind of how that was instilled in you, where that came from, how you've managed to kind of cultivate it in a world that often tells us, as Black women in particular, that actually we don't want to hear your voice and you're not worthy? How have you managed to clearly rise above that and stay focused on your goals?
I think focus is a good word. I think I'm somebody who, when I've decided I want to do something, I just keep going until I do it. And I think sometimes that means I choose not to see the obstacles, because if I think back now to setting up the business that I did, that was 2003. I mean, there wasn't an awful lot around in terms of what you see today, with a lot of support for entrepreneurs, a lot of guidance and all of that. I was always kind of doing things that weren't quite there yet. When I started Reconnect Africa, you know, as a web platform, providing careers advice for global Africans, trying to look at connecting Africans in that way around careers and professionalism, that wasn't happening at the time. So I think it was when I got that vision, I got this idea in my head of, my professional career has been all around building people, and I still do that as an executive coach, which is the other part of my current portfolio. It's like, how do you bring that space into the Africa space, into the people space? And the writing is actually an extension of that, because the books that I write are all about positioning Black women particularly center stage and talking about us as everyday people with everyday problems, rather than kind of traumatic problems that are taking us over, right? Yeah. We are navigating those traumatic problems the same as a white woman would, and we're having fun, we're also crying. We're going through the ups and the downs. We're fighting with our bosses. We're looking for promotions. We're having struggles with our relationships. But it's us in our everyday wholeness, as opposed to just a facet of us. So whether it's fiction, whether it's working with people as my clients to help them get out of their own way, it's about bringing that confidence from the inside out. I mean, personally, to answer your question, my confidence was instilled in me from day one because of the home that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. My father passed away earlier this year, but he has been, mm-hmm. for me, my biggest role model. Thank you. Forever, and he's somebody who just values hard work, ethics. He was actually a judge, so ethics was really key to the way he lived his life and his work. And doing a good job. And there are times, I remember there was one time I said to him, I'm so exhausted, I think I need to just stop doing, I think it was Reconnect Africa or something. And he just shrugged and said, well, you've only got your reputation to lose. So and it's like, I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. I'm going, and I'm like, okay, then I guess I'll be carrying on with that one. And
mm-hmm. I love that.
It's that kind of grounding. Mm-hmm. And again, he's, if anyone ever sort of talked about my dad, the word they always come up with is humble. It's not about thinking you are something. It's about making what you can do, make someone something, mm-hmm. Be of service. And so it's always been for me an easy role model to see and an easy life to model by saying, look, do the right thing. It doesn't always get you what you want straight away, mm-hmm. but do the right thing. And if it's going to get you a reward, it will get you a reward, but in time. But that's not the purpose. Just do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And I guess that gave us a sense of confidence that, it's very hard for outsiders to try and beat that confidence away, because it's there and it's reinforced every single day.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think it's so important that we do that with our children. So I know for me, for example, I'm consistently getting my daughter to repeat after me in the mornings. I am powerful, I am brave, I can do anything that I set my mind to. And I think it's just so important that our children are raised with that innate confidence within them, so that, as you said, nobody from the outside can rock that. So I definitely love that as a principle. One of the things that I've been kind of doing a lot of talking about on my social media is around dealing with challenges, overcoming obstacles, and what to do when things go wrong. On your journey, is there anything that you can pinpoint and just give us an example of where things have not necessarily worked out in a way that you anticipated and how you dealt with that?
It's a tough one to answer, because I think when you're running a business, especially one that you're kind of feeling the stones as you cross the river, as I think a Chinese saying goes, you almost don't know what's going to go wrong until it has gone wrong, and you have to recover from that. And I think it's, again, about a sense of resilience, which I think if you want to work for yourself, you need to develop. And certainly you need to have the seeds off before you make that decision, because nothing is really going to work the way you think it will. I'll just take this year as kind of on a total high. I had plans for 2 books out this year. I was going to be doing so many things. I had book launches planned to do in Ghana, and none of that. The first book came out, but everything else has just had to be revised. And we live in a very volatile world, and you can see that as a negative, and many of aspects of it are, because it's impacted the way we've been able to have relationships with our families, with our loved ones, with our friends. But at the same time, within every sense of chaos are opportunities. And they may be opportunities to do things like learn and grow. I mean, I know how to use Instagram now. Come see me 12 months ago. Because I didn't have to do chat with Instagram. Now it's like, you know, I'm getting in there and posting those things. You know, I learned to do Insta lives and, you know, not cut myself off in the middle of them. And, you know, just learning. You know, I learned more about taking control of my writing career and looking at what I need to do in order to market my books and, you know, use the power that the internet provides to start building and connecting with my readers more. You know, so all of these things have been ways in which I've had to adapt in my personal situation to the changes. So I think for me, you know, even if I look at how my business adapted, it's all about, you know, what's the goal? And if the goal is clear, then the roadmap might need to change, but it doesn't change the trajectory that you're heading in. And so you've got to know what that trajectory is, because otherwise you really are just, you know, flailing in the wind.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my services actually. It's called Vision 20, and it is about that. It's about creating a very clear vision for your business so that if, as you said, if things do start to kind of move to the left or the right, you still have the focus of where you're trying to get to. And I think a lot of small business owners don't appreciate how important it is to have a clearly documented kind of set of goals and a vision for the business. And that's why often when things go wrong along the journey, or when opportunities even are presented, people can sometimes jump on the wrong opportunity because they're not necessarily seeing how it aligns with their end goal because they don't have one. So I think that's really useful as well. So you said you worked in Ghana for 5 years.
Yeah.
What was the kind of, what was your experience even of moving from the UK to Ghana and adjusting to I suppose the business culture in another country and in various countries, because you said it's been more than just Ghana. Because I know for me, I would love to do more international work, but what I don't necessarily know is all of the different cultural nuances and how to, I suppose, navigate those when looking at international business. Oh, great.
Well, there's a little book here.
I want to work in Africa. Fabulous.
That I wrote to answer that question. Seriously, it's a nice little chunky guide to opportunities on the continent, but I think more importantly, it's about how do you clarify your goals, what do you want to do, which country do you want to go to, what do you know about it, how are you going to create a network, how do you write a great CV, how do you use LinkedIn. So it's the usual steps for any job, but it's contextualized within Africa. So tons of useful information. I will talk about that another time, but that's kind of the culmination of my lessons, right? So my family always ensured we went back to Ghana regularly. So growing up, we would go back maybe a year, maximum every 2 years, and spend a holiday there. So it wasn't an unfamiliar place. And having the chance to go back, which was driven by a man rather than good deeds, was something which then made me think, right. So I have to be honest about these things. So when I got there, I was really sort of like hooked. But, you know, going there was like, yeah, you know, I could do with the break, beach, parties, you know, have fun. I was quite pragmatic. I got myself a job before I went. And actually, I think the thing is, coming back to your question about the business culture, I think much like anywhere, it depends on where you're working. So the first job that I had was the central bank, which had a very different feel as a sort of quasi-public sector institution to the second role that I took, which was a private bank, investment bank. And so, again, the two business cultures were quite different within themselves. I think, though, there are probably lessons that are consistent for anybody going anywhere. One is listen first, speak second, right? You're going into an environment and you have to learn to understand the environment. And the danger is sometimes we go in thinking we have all the answers, or what I used to do in London, or somebody else might say what I did in the States, you know, and everybody comes thinking they have the solution to problems they don't even understand yet.
Yeah.
And so you've really, first of all, got to listen. You've got to learn. You've got to be humble about it, because, you know, you are only going to trip yourself up if you don't take advice. And what works in one context will not work in another. So, you know, something you may have done as a great initiative in one country just may not translate. And I always think of my, you know, Christmas party solution, where we went in with this idea, oh yeah, we had this sort of nice staff Christmas party, and I thought everybody would be really happy with it. And I was talking to some of the drivers, and they were like, one of them was like, oh, madame. And I was like, why, what's wrong? Christmas party, yay. And he's like, well, no, not really, because, you know, the staff bus won't be taking us back to near our house. So he said, madame, you might think it's great, but it's going to cost me money. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, my wife will have to buy a dress. It's going to cost me. The staff bus doesn't work at that time, so we're going to have to pay transport to come in from where we live and pay transport to go home. And, you know, it's just really going to be difficult. We have to find someone with it for the children. And then I realized, you know, what you assume is rah-rah for everybody is not.
Yeah.
And until you talk to people, until you understand other people's perspective, you're not giving a solution that's going to work for everybody. And so for me, it was about then, okay, talking to everybody at the different levels within the organization to say what would work for you. And the next year we changed it. And we just had a cash sum that we translated into things like rice and chicken and oil and things like that. And people could choose which bits they wanted. And that went down a storm.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's about really adapting you, not expecting other people to adapt to you. And learning.
I think that's really useful information, and it's true. Sometimes we can impose our ideals and our opinions on people, and actually stopping and taking stock can be really useful, and particularly in a business context as well. I always say to my clients, take a customer-centered approach, not a business-centered approach. So yeah, focus on what the customer wants, what the customer needs, what their problem is, not what you want to do, because the two things may not be aligned. So I think that kind of sits with what you said as well. Support system. You obviously have a lot going on. You're doing a lot. How important is having a support system, and who's in your support system?
Oh, it's massive, having a support system. If you don't have one, I don't even know what I don't even know what would happen. And I'm blessed. You know, I've got a great family who are really supportive, and you know, you call and say this is happening, that's happening, and you know, at worst you'll get a good ear to listen to, and at best you'll pragmatic and practical help as well. So, you know, that's always there. And I've got a really good tight-knit group of sister friends, as I call them, and you know, we're there for each other. And so, you know, everyone's got their own personalities and their own ways of approaching things, but you know, it's like having your own little mini library of reference points, and some of them are also running their own businesses, so they understand some of those issues. Others, you know, it's more about talking through the other stuff. And but yeah, I think that group, that little village of women that I have, and that's been critical all through. So everybody should get their own little board of directors together.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think having people that can sometimes call you out as well, I think is really important, and hold you accountable if you have a crisis confidence, or if you're not doing things the way you said you was going to. I think sometimes having people in your circle that aren't afraid to say, actually, no, why are you doing this? You said that you weren't doing that, or you are doing that and you've not done it. I think that can be really key as well.
Agreed. And also just somebody, again, who can say, well, and I remember when I started the business plan, first of all, one of my friends who set up her business around the same time, we would literally do for each other, mirror, and say, well, what about this? Well, I'm not sure about that. That's not so. And it just helps you strengthen your case by having someone kick the tires. So while some people get very defensive, I always say, look, take criticism, because if you don't answer the question when your friend is asking it, when you're going to go and try and pitch for money or for an investor, they're going to ask that same question. You're not going to be prepared because you're busy being defensive. If there's a hole, fix the hole. Don't blame the person showing you there's a hole.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good point. It's true. So finally then, going into the last section of the interview, 3 pieces of advice that you would give to a woman that's sitting at home, she's listening, she's watching, and she's in the early stages of starting her own business. What advice would you give to her?
First of all, be honest with yourself, right? Working for yourself is not for everybody. You've got to know you have the right temperament for it. You've got to be able to, maybe you're doing this on your own and maybe you've got a partner, but you've got to be able to just have the self-confidence and the strength to know that it's not going to go well necessarily and be able to rebound from that and make it better. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be. So that's the first thing. Just know you've got the right temperament for it. There's no shame in not having that. Mm-hmm. But just know that that's the right thing. I think the second thing is, as we've been talking about, be ready to be adaptable. Mm-hmm. Because the market is what should drive your business. And if what you have developed as a business plan isn't going to your plan, but there is a market that is saying, but actually we want this from you and we want that from you, go with that. That's what your market is prepared to pay for. So adapt your plan so that you give your customers, your market, what they want, not what you think they should have, mm-hmm. or what you think they should want. Mm-hmm. And I think the last thing really is be persistent. If this is what you've decided to do, be persistent. It doesn't happen overnight. I don't even know of anybody who's struck gold overnight. They might get known overnight, but there's been years and years of hard work before they got known. Mm-hmm. And it's a journey. It's not an act, right? Working for yourself is not an act, it's a journey. So when you made that decision, everything goes aligned to get you down that journey, but it is a journey. So don't get discouraged. Know that you are on the right track. Just keep your focus, keep the trajectory clear, but keep going. Press on, as my dear uncle used to say.
Fabulous. That's wonderful advice. She the Boss recommends. I'm asking each of my interview participants to recommend a book that has had a significant impact on your life, whether that be a business book or a personal development book. What is your book?
You can't ask an author that question and think she's just going to pass up the opportunity. So we've been talking about support systems and sisterhood, and I'm inspired by my sister friends. And I wrote my latest novel called Imperfect Arrangements, mm-hmm. which is the story of 3 sister friends. It's set in Ghana, so for people who'd like to do a bit of traveling in their head if they can't do it at the moment, it's a great story. And it's really about 3 best friends and their intertwined love, lives, and friendship. Mm-hmm. And it's all about exactly what you were saying, calling each other out, but being there for each other. So it's a celebration of sisterhood, but it's also an exploration of relationships and marriage. So mm-hmm. bit of a combo there with a bit of Africa thrown in. Can't miss.
Wonderful. And so guys watching, listening, go out and get that book.
Going that.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy and a pleasure speaking to you and hearing more about your story and your journey. If people want to find out more about you, I know you're on Instagram now. What platforms, what are your handles, what's your website address?
Yeah. So my website is francesmensahwilliams.com. My Instagram is Frances Mensah W. And Facebook, again, facebook.com/Frances Mensah Williams. And all my books are on Amazon. Please reach out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Wishing you all of the success in the future and continue doing amazing things and being fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, have a great day. And thank you so much for the invitation. It's been a really great chat.
Thank you for coming on board. And thank you guys for watching, for listening. As usual, if there's anything that Frances has said that has resonated with you, please leave a comment. Please make sure that you like. Please make sure that you share with your networks, particularly if there's anybody that you know that is really going to get some value from this, which should be everybody that you know. And don't forget to tune in next week, Sunday, 8 p.m. for another She's the Boss Female Entrepreneur story. And if you haven't already done so, again, click that subscribe button. And I'll be back next week. Take care.